allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Naomi, roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here, we can't hear you.
Mayor Holtzclaw, can you hear me?
I think you asked if I'm here, but I still can barely, we can barely hear you in the chamber.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel? She can't hear me. Mayor Pro Tem Vanel, can you hear me?
Here.
Councilmember Bond?
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari?
Here.
Councilmember Stackler?
Here.
Councilmember Briles?
Here.
Councilmember Morgan?
Here.
Thank you, Naomi. We had you back, but now we have you. Joe, are you?
I don't understand why this is
Okay. Well, we will just bear with it and see if we can fight through this. Okay, we are at audience communication. Maybe we won't fight through it. Okay, we are at audience communication. We're going to begin tonight. We'll give the opportunity for those that are in the audience. If anyone would like to address the council, please raise your hand. Mr. Johnson, go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. It's your turn. Name and address, and then once we're through with people in person, we'll move to the virtual.
So, good evening. Neil Johnson, 1540 151st Place, Southeast, Mill Creek. Juniper, been here for Mill Creek for 30 years. Last week, I posed 5 questions to the city and council. Thank you so much to city manager, staff for the detailed answers. We all know that I think now that our police department is seriously understaffed. The city and council have been addressing the police situation for some time, and it looks like soon we will be seeing improvements in numbers, staffing numbers, and morale. In addition to city efforts, we credit Vince Cavallari for his success in recruiting experienced officers. It looks positive that recent interviews will help police staff that 24 officers budgeted by the city council, and that the council in the future will consider expanding to the recommended 36 officers. Even 24 officers is the bare minimum. As the city offers bonuses to incoming officers, should the city provide bonuses to our present loyal officers? City Manager Mike has explained the limitations of the overall city budget, making for tough decisions. Mill Creek citizens need to become aware of the extreme seriousness of the situation. We need results. Most likely, Mill Creek citizens would support a task to build our police force to full capacity. I believe I speak for most Mill Creek citizens that we place a high priority on a fully staffed and effective police department. Thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here? Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go on the honor system. Did Barbara or Will get their hand up first? Barb, go ahead, Barb. Name and address.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. The echo is really bad. It's very hard to understand. I hope you can understand me. Out of curiosity, is there a reason why? Is there a reason why we see revenue reports? Oh, guys, Bad for you as it is for me. Can you hear me?
Barb, I can hear you. It is difficult for all of us on Zoom. It is untenable.
Yes, but you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine, but everybody in the council chamber caused a huge echo.
Okay,
Somewhere there's a bad echo.
thank you.
Second, Barb.
Ben and Barb are with us. We're trying to sort through what's going on.
Okay.
Barb, you might just go ahead and plug your own ears and just talk and see if that works. They might be able to listen to yourself. It won't work.
That's so awful. Brian, do you want me to go ahead?
Hold on one sec, Barb. We're still trying to sort it out. This is we fix problems on our end. You have problems on your end, vice versa.
So bad.
We're gonna figure this out.
No, I'm going to remove co-host permissions for everybody's device.
I brought the bad mojo from New York.
Maybe that would help.
Joe, are you able to mute our mics? Everyone's mics except for the speaker.
So I see Councilmember Bryles, mic is not muted. I see Mayor, you're not muted. Only had one mute.
No, he's talking about when you're on Zoom, muting it on the app.
That's better.
Barb, can you say something so we can see if we can hear you?
Sure. Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sounds good.
Hey.
Barb, if you could, sorry for the technical difficulties. If you could start from the beginning, please.
Very beginning. With my name,
Yes, please.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. Out of curiosity, is there a reason why we see revenue reports only when the budget is presented? Every month we see the accounts payable report. It would be good to see the revenue report at the same time, not just a general mention how it's lower than 2019, which was a very good year for us, especially with the passport department. I know for me, it would ease the concern of our financial situation to be kept apprised of our standing financially. I would think it would be somewhat simple enough to print out what money has come in each month. Thank you.
Listen.
Yeah, Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive Southeast. Personally, I tend to grow a bit tired of the continual attacks on the police departments throughout the country. Granted, there's some police officers who should have never been police officers, but it appears to me that here on the West Coast and the Northwest, we obviously must have better people, better screening, and overall a better quality of police than maybe in other parts of the country. If the police department did not exist, I think we would probably invent it to keep a thumb on the mayhem that occur if they were not around. And I can empathize a lot with their current situation, having experienced, seen some of my fellow soldiers experience similar adverse comments after the Vietnam War as they returned from overseas. As far as our local police department goes, it's my understanding that they perhaps do 2 to 3 reports or whatever the police call these interaction things they have with civilians on a daily basis. whereas the sheriffs and other larger police departments may do 6 or 7 a day, maybe 8 for all I know. So I don't think our police department is overworked, but I do fully recognize the position that if you have too few people, then you cannot adequately plan for training, vacations, sick time, etc. And so I guess we need to add 4 or 5 people to the roles. I don't think we need to add 15 or 17. I think that would be many, way too many. And would we want to pay for that increased expense? And you know, we could put a fire truck and an ambulance in every subdivision if we wanted to pay for it, for that matter. So anyway, I hope that things start going better for them. And that I would ask the progressives in the world, or at least in this country, is how is all of this police defunding working for you now? I look at the polls, I see what's on TV tonight back east, and it doesn't look like the progressives are doing that well on this issue. Anyway, that's concludes my comments. Thank you.
Anyone else in the virtual world? Move to page 2. I did not see any hands. Anyone? Going once, twice, 3 times. There'll be another opportunity as usual at the end of the meeting. We're going to move on now to old business, the proposed resolution on law enforcement standards and requirements. Glad to have Representatives Lovick and Berg with us tonight. Recall that I introduced the proposed resolution 2 or 3 meetings ago. And in response, Representative Berg reached out to me and asked for us to have a conversation, which she and I and Representative Lovick and Mayor Pro Tem and the city manager and police chief did a week and a half ago. Based on that meeting, I have proposed a revised version of the resolution for our consideration. But tonight you asked for them to attend a meeting to ask some questions. So I'm going to turn the mics over to both of them if either or both of them would like to say a few words, and then open it up for questions from the council. So with that, Representative Lovick and Berg.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. I'm John Lovick, and I've lived in Mill Creek for over 30 years. And in full disclosure, I want you to know that I absolutely love this city. I wish all of you peace, patience, and kindness. Speaking of kindness, I'm going to start by thanking one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life, Councilmember Mark Bond. Thank you for your service to our community. You retired after dedicating many years keeping us safe. Thank you for your sense of charity, your compassion, your empathy, your extraordinary kindness. Your character is the quality that makes you the wonderful person you are. You did your job and you did it well, not because it served your interest, but because it served the interest of others. English writer William Penn once said, "You, sir, are a jewel worth a kingdom." Thank you for your service. Good evening again, everybody, and thank you for letting me join you tonight. Also for the great work that you do. It is said, and I absolutely agree, that our local elected officials are the foot soldiers of our democracy. I've met most of you, and I appreciate the great work that you do. I've also met most of the police chiefs and spent time with the county sheriff just 2 Fridays ago. While we don't agree on everything, we all agree that community safety is our #1 priority. I even had the opportunity this afternoon to ride with Corporal Brett Thompson from the Mill Creek Police Department. What a delightful afternoon I had. I tell people this all the time. I tell them that I'm black, I'm brown, and I'm blue. I wore the blue uniform for 31 years as a state trooper. My son is a sergeant with the Los Angeles Police Department, and I have other relatives in law enforcement. We refer to law enforcement as the family business. A gentleman by the name of Arthur McDuffie once said, "A police officer can do something in a second or a minute that can sour a community for a decade." I believe in my heart, truly in my heart, that 99.9% of our police officers come to work every day and do their job to the best of their ability. They do what is right, and they treat everyone with dignity and respect. Legislation we passed was for those who don't. In January, at a hearing in front of the Senate Law and Justice Committee, a lady by the name of Monisha said, "The year 2020 gave us perfect vision. It clearly showed us the inequities that exist in our society." After George Floyd was murdered, we felt that some criminal justice reform was needed. These masks are really hard to talk through. We put together a policing policy leadership team. Our goal was community relations and accountability. We consulted with some of the leading scholars in the country. We drafted and passed 13 bills that were signed by the governor. The bills we passed are intended to work together to establish clear expectations for officer behavior, to set baselines for acceptable use of force, tactics, and equipment, and to put in place a system of accountability and transparency to create systemic change. In addition to meeting with the police chief, I met with many of the police leaders, the community leaders. The message I have received is absolutely consistent. We've been told again and again and again, and it's clear to us that we need to make some adjustments in the Behavioral Health Involuntary Treatment Act, reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. And most of you will know that as the Terry stop. I see you nodding up and down, Mark. Modifying restrictions on vehicle pursuits. That is expanding the authority to engage in a pursuit. And finally, modifying restrictions on firearms and ammunition. Clarifying language on physical use of force. I sent you a document today. It is clear to us. We did what we felt was our best, but we have language drafted, came out yesterday, and we're going to make some adjustments to some of the bills that we passed. With that, love to take any questions, but maybe April would like to go first. Save it?
No, I'll say hi. Yeah. So I just wanted to say hi, and I'm playing tambourine tonight because, as you can see, Rep. Lovick is kind of a subject matter expert for obvious reasons in this area. But I do want to say that I really do respect the work that you're doing as a city council, the transparency, and really the collaboration. So most of you know I am a resident too of Mill Creek, so the 44th. We represent the whole district, but myself and Rep. Lovick live here and honestly raised my kids here, and so making it a safe, welcoming community for everyone is always a top priority as the mother of 6, and of course your local school board director. So I just say that so that we can take your questions, keep the conversation and dialogue open. And as we progress tonight, I'm hoping this will be the first of many conversations around public safety in our beautiful city.
And Mr. Mayor, may I just say this? When I tell you I've lived in Mill Creek for 30 years, I probably have been to just about every house in this city. I could tell you the car that has the 65 GTO, I could tell you the 65 Mustang. What I have found walking around in this city, and I walk it every day. I go, 5 miles in the morning. I do a thing called 5 at 5. You'll see me out at 5 in the morning walking. What I found, and I really believe that this is not only a safe city where people are safe, I think they feel safe in this community. And the things that we want to do in law enforcement, in the legislature, we want to make sure that there is overall accountability. And that's why we worked on what we worked on. But like I said earlier, and I sent all of you a copy of the document, there will be some changes. We have a draft of the legislation that we will be changing, and that's going to take place probably day one when we get back to the legislature. Love to have any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Representative Lovick and Representative Berg, for coming in this evening to go over our questions and ambiguities in some of these bills. I know when you spoke with us, you had said that you had been talking to the chiefs and mayors from lots of different cities, and it seems like you just elaborated on some of your the things that have come up from those discussions. I would like to know, a lot of people are different things being said. And so I'd like to know, some officers, I'm hearing that some officers are leaving the profession. And I've read where 70 plus state troopers have left. Is this because of these new laws?
Mayor Pro Tem Vigno, thanks for the question. And let me just go back a little bit. I graduated from the State Patrol Academy in 1975. 2 months after I graduated, 2 members quit the State Patrol. Within 3 months, a total of 5 had quit. But what I always looked at, and I always like to focus on the good, 29 members were out there every single day doing their job. 74 state troopers are retired or resigned. But you know what? There are still 1,000 plus state troopers out there doing their job every single day. I hate it when any officer chooses to leave, but I also know that it's their absolute right. Some are leaving for a variety of reasons. They're retiring because, you know, they have the time and they're retiring because maybe they didn't want to get the vaccination. I know some personally. I hate the fact that any are leaving, but you know, I also look at the good and I say 1,000 officers go to work every single day and do their job to the best of their ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Levick. I was curious, we had discussed a little bit about SB 5066 and ambiguities requiring a peace officer to intervene when witnessing another officer engaged in excessive use of force. Could you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
The thought process behind that legislation was accountability. And the example that I shared with the legislature when we passed that particular bill, the example that I shared was that we have, in the heat of the moment, things happen. And we're just simply asking officers, if you see inappropriate behavior on the part of an officer, you have an obligation, a responsibility to intervene. I gave them an example of driving to Olympia the day before the session, and I stopped to assist a trooper. My wife is still upset that I stopped to assist a trooper, but that's in my DNA. I stopped to assist a trooper, and the lady, while I was helping lift her off the ground, she gave me a good pinch in the thigh. You know, I got to tell you, it hurt like a son of a gun. But you know what? Like I told him, if I had done something to her, I would have been arrested for that. So why not hold our officers accountable? And you know, 99.999% of the officers want to be held accountable because they don't want to work with bad officers. We're saying if you see officers engage in bad activities, you have an obligation to report it. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. I have one last question that I know others are dying to ask questions as well. You had mentioned in our discussion something about a program called DROP. Could you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yes.
DROP.
So one of the things that I drop every time you pass a bill in Olympia, you need a nice acronym, right? You need something to make it, if you can. DROP stands for Deferred Retirement Option Plan. And it's something that I am working on, and it's a deferred retirement option plan. Los Angeles has it, other cities and other states have it. It basically allows the officer to, after he or she gets 25 years in or age 53, actively retire from retirement and have their retirement fund go into what is called a drop plan at a high interest, and they can continue working. It helps maintain some of that seniority. The guy can stay right where he or she was working. That's what DROP is, Deferred Retirement Option Plan. I have a proposal that I'm looking at. It's not getting a lot of love because there are other plans that are being considered for police officers to make for some retention.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
One of these, I'll do it. She nails me when we get into things like education and finance. So this is fair. Give me a chance to get even with her.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Yes, Cavalier.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, representatives, for coming here today. Really appreciate you coming down and discussing with the folks here is what we've tried to do. Originally I had selected a few pieces or a few snippets of the 3 House bills that I've cherry picked from what was passed in the past legislation session. But the resolution that was originally presented here in council, or that we had discussed, was merely the request to have the representatives convene an emergency session and go back to Olympia for clarification. And I don't have all the answers of all those ambiguities. I have several. But I think you have to agree that with the number of cities, the number of officers, and there are officers leaving, to Councilmember Vignal's point, our guild president left and went to Arizona for that specific reason. I don't think the lay public understands the severity of some of these, and about potentially losing your home or your certification in the state for, I mean, we take, like, let's say the janitor in Mill Creek here, and I'm just using that term, leaves too much water on the floor and someone slips and God forbid they get hurt, seriously injured. The way the legislation that is written today, it seems like it's almost like the best way I can equate it is if you remember that cartoon where the character is walking out of a building and there's a safe held together by a string right outside. As he walks out, it gets cut and flattens him. That's the feeling that officers have, and many of the citizens now feel as well. That's the feeling that these folks have now with these bills, because not just with the pursuit issues, not just because of accountability issues. I think we can all agree on accountability. To use someone else's statement that just left one of our departments, I shouldn't have to worry if I'm going to be able to feed my family at the end of the day because I messed up. So I think, and we can go into some specifics here if you want, but I'm hoping that the whole idea of this resolution was that we convene an emergency session. This way, the legislature, who is the appropriate body to address this, can address these ambiguities that were recommended. And I think I don't want to get lost in too much minutia. I have too much respect for the process than to cherry pick pieces and try to dissect them here. There's a process, and I think that's what I was hoping for, and that was what I was hoping we would discuss as well.
And thank you. And we're standing here, we're all ears. And I will tell you that if it's something we want to discuss, I will. But I will tell you that in all of the police chiefs that I've spent time with, I've met with the 4 South County mayors, that's Renton, Kent, Auburn, Federal Way. The message has been very consistent. These are the areas that they're talking about, 4 specific areas of 13 bills that we passed. And a lot of things we do, we don't always get it right. And in some areas we didn't get it right. But to go back and address the area of the officer, I hate it when any officer leaves a department, because I know the investment that we make in the brave men and women who go out there and work for us. But I also know that if that's what a person chooses to do, I believe in doing everything I can to try and keep them from doing it, but I hate to see them do it. I was very upset, if you really want to know. My voice goes up when I saw that state troopers laid their hats on the Capitol steps. That just really, really hit me to the core, because there was just something about that hat that I loved wearing. And we were told when we were issued that hat, it should never touch the ground. And to see 50 hats on the Capitol steps, but those officers chose to leave. How they did it, I felt bad about it, but that's their prerogative and their right to do it. We are going to address the ambiguities. I am on the phone in meetings every single day to make sure that we address the issues that the public has brought to our attention. And I got an education today going out riding with Officer Thompson. He just pointed out areas that will help me so that I won't just go back and say, this is what we're doing. Let's do it based on facts. And that's the way we're going to do it.
I just wanted to briefly say something. And as most of you know, I'm a first-term legislator. One of the things that really hit me about these bills was how much collaboration was done to create these bills. This was not done in a vacuum. This was not done with just our public safety committee. This was actually done in a very collaborative way with multiple law enforcement agencies. I had the opportunity to talk with some of the police chiefs before these bills passed, and we were able to talk through some of the issues, if you will, red flags, and what issues need to be addressed. And we addressed many of them. You can see through the progress of the bill, there was many, many amendments coming from a lot of different law enforcement communities, to make them better before they got over the finish line. That said, no bill is perfect. And one of the reasons why we're coming out today to talk with you is to open up those lines of communication. I think with the resolution in its original form, there was this thought of legislature, go back, go do something. We're not sure what, just do something, fix it. And I think what a more productive process would be, and one of the reasons why I reached out to the mayor was to say, look, let's have a conversation. Let's open the communication lines and let's talk as a city to your state legislators about what we need to fix and how. And part of what Rep. Lovick has laid out is really our plan for early action. And those are the bills that are very important. You saw that with COVID, we did a lot of early action bills as soon as we gavelled in, taking care of our small businesses, our cities, our local municipalities that really needed help immediately. So we absolutely know how to do things with a sense of urgency. But right now the process is working where we're going out to communities, some of which are saying, these are fantastic. These are the things that we've needed. These are the things that our community members have asked for. There are unfortunately names in this state that can be said who have been victims of police brutality. And to Rep. Lovick's point, that is such a small percentage of our police force. As many of you know, my brother is a 20+ year veteran of the Washington, D.C. Metro Police Force. So again, law enforcement is in our family's DNA as well. And so we kind of know when we talk about getting folks home safely and what that looks like and what service looks like and keeping communities safe. But what I will tell you for this particular package of bills, was it perfect? No. Does there need to be clarification? Absolutely. And will we do it with a sense of urgency and purpose as soon as we gavel in? Absolutely. So, but thank you for your question on that. And thank you for editing the resolution to be more reflective of our collaborative nature with the city.
Councilmember Bond.
Thank you. Thank you both for your service. Thanks for coming tonight. John, thank you for your kind words. My 31-year adventure in law enforcement started 2 years before 1990. I was going to be a stockbroker and make millions, and that was my 19-year-old plan. But that wasn't working out. I interviewed with some stockbroker types, and they were not happy. And they weren't making the millions, and they weren't real happy with their job. And in the back of my church, there was a gentleman that would show up when he could, worked a lot of Sundays. Saw John Lovick. He had stopped by, and I went and I said, "Do you like being a police officer?" And he said, "I love it." And I said, "Can you tell me what you like about it?" He goes, "I'll do better than that. Come out on a Friday night, do a ride along with me." So I did a ride along, the hook was set, and I never looked back. One of the cool things was it got rainy, and it was kind of ugly. And there was a car that had gone off the ditch and was down an embankment. And John said, "Go down there and look and see if there's any dead bodies." I know now he just didn't want to get his really shiny boots muddy, and he sent me down. But at the time, I'm like, oh, I'm being tasked with this adventure here. And I went in, and the guy had a naked lady air freshener. And I'll just don't know why I remember that, but it was clear as it was yesterday. I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast today, but I remember that night and that adventure with John, and the fact that he took time with a young man to encourage me and point me in a good direction. And I've always tried to do the same with young people that come to me and sort of pass that on. So thank you so much. The 4 things that you said you're going to work on are the 4 things I would have brought to you. So you're dialed in on what the problem is. I am a little saddened that you made it very clear, both of you, that it's 99.9% are the good guys, but we're running this massive amount of legislation for this very, very small group that could negatively impact, in some ways, the safety of the community, because when you change the rules for how the police engage too much, with good intentions, I'm not questioning anybody's motivation or intentions, but it did. I never promoted out of patrol. I was patrol guy up until September 8th, my last day this year. And I did not leave because of this legislation. I didn't leave. I can adapt. I would have made this work if I was a younger man. It was just, I'm old enough and it's time. So I did not leave for this. If it was 10 years ago, I'd still be working today, and I would adapt to the rules. The rules are always changing for law enforcement, and the folks that can't adapt can find themselves getting in trouble. The police work that worked in the 70s didn't work in the 80s, and the stuff that worked in the 80s didn't work in the 90s. And now we're always going to be evolving. And I absolutely support John Lovick, Representative Lovick's comments about people leaving. If it's right for them, it's right for them. And it's not our place to second guess. Now, if they come to us and say, I am leaving and this is the reason, and it is something that happens to be under our control, then maybe we can look at it. But short of that, we need to just support people's decisions. This is going to be a very complicated problem. There's a job market shortage right now, as many of you are aware. We just lost a guy that only had a couple months. Snohomish County Sheriff's hired him from Seattle. He wasn't there even a year, and he took a job with Boeing. Well, the sheriff's office is paying like $86,000 a year, and Boeing's paying $138,000. You do the math.
Wow.
I mean, why would he stay? So there's competition for workers, Boeing, Amazon, and all these other places. There's a shortage of good workers, and the cops are pretty marketable, many of them. And so we're going to have some challenges here. I mean, the recruitment issue, the Seattle area negative energy is a challenge for young people that have watched the last year and a half on the news. They may not find this to be a desirable job for them. The idea of what the Seattle officers we saw on the news experience, they may not realize the experience in Mill Creek as an officer might be different, or what I experienced serving the citizens of Sultan and East County might be different. Also, what they bring will interact with that. And I want to chime in. One of the things that bothered me, it wasn't said tonight, but I just want to make the point. We hear over and over and over, there's a small group of bad police officers, and both the representatives and I, and probably everybody up here would agree. But some people follow that up with the good cops cover for the bad. And I 100% disagree with that. I would never tolerate inappropriate conduct. The people that I work with knew that I know they would hold me accountable, and I'm going to hold them. Whatever we do, it's public, and you will be held accountable, and you're not taking me down by making bad choices. If you have a good cop and a bad cop, and the good cop covers for the bad cop, you do not have a good cop. You have two bad cops. So the people that I work with understand that. They won't tolerate bad behavior. Mistakes we learn from, but willful, wanton, bad choices result in appropriate disciplinary action and termination, hopefully, should the system work the way it should.
Councilman Bond, I'll tell you this. When you were talking, I wrote down a statement that I've said many times. You stand for what you tolerate. Think about it. You stand for what you tolerate. If you tolerate poor performance, if you tolerate bad officers, that is what you stand for. And that's why I say this all the time. 99.999% of our officers do a great job. It's not about them. It's about the one officer. It's about a Derek Chauvin who will spoil a community forever. And then I just want to say one last thing about people in law enforcement. People always talk about, I focus on the good. I always focus on the good. I was at the Criminal Justice Training Commission. You've been there, I'm sure, many times. I was there 4 weeks ago. There were 6 classes at the Criminal Justice Training Commission. 6 classes of 30 members each, and they can't get them in there fast enough. We're going to, I hate it when good people leave, but we're also recruiting and doing our best to bring more officers into the profession. And I think we're going to continue to do that.
And thank you, Councilmember Bond, because first off, I love hearing you speak. Can I just say that? So you have a way of putting things in an eloquent way that really just gets to the heart of them. And you mentioned something and I couldn't let go, which is jobs and the labor shortage and where we are as a country, really in historic, unprecedented times. I just want to keep that in mind because I want the communication to stay open between myself, Rep. Levick, and everyone in leadership at the city, because there are absolute revenue issues. There's absolute capital issues that I think we could work collaboratively on. One thing that Chief Young said, which again, you start talking dollars and cents to me, was body cams, right? And finding funding. And I know there's probably a whole laundry list of things. We are here. Our doors are open. We want to work with the city to get things done. And I just can't say that enough or strongly enough. I was excited when we were able to get the funding for the park this year and have that money coming with our capital budget. When that came out in our capital budget, I thought, thank you for recognizing Mill Creek. Thank you for recognizing our need. But I want to say to this council, thank you for asking. So what I'm hoping after tonight, and the questions, and we're here as long as you want us, but just to keep the conversations open, kind of at that ad hoc level, to talk about needs, talk about funding, talk about revenue. And I'll definitely be leaving a stack of information as well, hopefully some pretty cards like my seatmate as well. So we'll see. But I want you to make sure to take it home, email me, call me anytime, day or night, so that we can talk about the needs of the city and keep the dialogue open.
Councilmember
I
Stackler.
just have to say one last thing to Councilmember Bond. We were southbound on State Route 525 approaching I-5 when I sent you down to check that car out. So, and you got your shoes muddy and I didn't, but I knew it was safe down there.
Councilmember Stackler.
You have to use your mic. Councilmember Stackler.
I wasn't clicked on, so I will repeat myself. Thank you again for your service, and especially thank you for coming tonight to take some time and talk with us. You know, Representative Lovick, you turned to Representative Berg and you said, you know, when we talk about finance and education, I defer to her because she's more the expert. Well, when it comes to police, I defer to many other council members up here being far greater experts than I am. That's not my area of expertise. I'm more of the business and finance guy. But sometimes it is interesting to see somebody who's from outside an area of expertise and their opinion and observation on it. And also, I don't know if we haven't really talked about this. We are currently in the midst of some unprecedented times right now, which we've lived through. COVID and some of the other issues that have spurred some of the very legislation that we're talking about today. And we're trying to create action. We're trying to create things. We're trying to get things done. We're trying to respond to it. And sometimes, and I think as you said, maybe there's an opportunity here to go back, and I love the word you said, clarify. Stuck with me out of everything that was said, the word clarify. That seems to be, as an outsider, my concern. Police officers that I have talked to are confused by this legislation. Very, very simply, I need some clarification as to, am I at risk? Am I putting my family at risk? Am I going to be backed up? Are people going to be standing behind me? Am I going to be hung out to dry? All these things you've heard. So I think it should be, if I send back my 2 cents, it would be, gosh, I hope you guys can really help to clarify this verbiage to the point that any officer who is a good officer should look at this and not be afraid and not be concerned and not have that fear, because it's clear what the guidelines are. And if they're doing their job, they know what the boundaries are. They know that they're not going to be hung out to dry. That's the goal of this, is to create that clarification. Just as one lonely little council member from Mill Creek, my recommendation, a wonderful goal to go for. I think that would go miles in bringing this legislation, the clarification and revision of it back. So that's my 2 cents. But again, my thank you to you both for your service and for coming here tonight to take the time.
Councilmember, your point is well taken and well stated. And I will tell you this, what I always say to people, and I've met with many officers, and I take a copy of the bill with me. And all I ask them is that you can, in this legislation where you can't do your job, but you have to do your job and you have to do it the right way. And there are some, like I said, some ambiguities there that we're going to straighten out. And when we pass this, probably the first or second day of the session, it's going to be on a fast track to the governor's desk with an emergency clause. It'll take effect immediately. We know that. We're dealing with this every single day of the week.
Chief Young, did you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Rep. Berg and Lovick, for being here tonight. It's very much appreciated. We do have some officers within our own police department here that are very concerned about some of the provisions and the ambiguity as we discussed last week. So I just want to really emphasize and ask you to hurry up and please get the changes and the ambiguities taken care of, because it does have an impact on service delivery and officer safety. So again, thank you for being here. And the sooner the better that things get corrected. That would be greatly appreciated. And that, I think I comfortably say that on behalf of all law enforcement officers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Enjoyed the conversation we had, I believe it was last week. And what I really wanted to just briefly state, I had an opportunity to attend a seminar, a managers and risk managers seminar that by WCIA, our insurer. And besides impressing upon me a number of oversight supervisory responsibilities that are a part of the new duties that we'll have as part of management, HR, administration, is this concern that we heard echoed during the seminar that the insurance industry itself is doing a reevaluation about whether or not they can afford to underwrite risk in this area. And there are so many unfunded mandates that come from the federal level of government and Now that we're talking about this with the new state law, I would ask that you and your colleagues pay attention to the impact this has on what I'm hearing is being characterized as a potential exodus of insurance underwriting in this field, and how that can impact us as a community and as an entity that's ultimately burdened with the risk. Yes, we do take our oversight responsibilities seriously, and we will absolutely implement this law to the very best of our abilities. But know that at the end of the day, if we don't have an insurance underwriter that's going to cover the traditional books of business in the police liability area, this crisis could exacerbate in a way that has a financial zipper effect on all of the municipalities. So as you go back to talk about reform, we'd respectfully ask that you take that under consideration.
Thank you. And I will follow up with you when we could have more time to discuss this. I could take forever to talk about this right now, but I know we're probably running out of time, but I'd like to call you up and come to your office or meet you by Zoom.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Before I get back to Councilmember Cavallari, I'm going to look down to this side of the dais. Any? Okay, Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you again, Mayor. Representatives, I just wanted to quickly say thanks for coming out. Many representatives or legislators across the country really have taken opportunities like this to hide in Zoom meetings, and you haven't. And you have my utmost respect, as both of you know. John and I, we've known each other many years. My respect and admiration. Thank you again for coming. I hope that you will understand the severity that every city in your district is signing this or signing on unanimously to this legislation. That I've heard it spoken here tonight. I want to make sure that it is priority one, that it does get the attention that it deserves in the legislative session sooner rather than later. That's it. And thank you again for showing up here.
Great, thanks. Thanks for saying that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I reiterate what Councilmember Cavallari just said, with thanking you very much for coming out here to open up this dialogue with us and being so available and transparent. And while you're here, I had a more fun question. Since we have access to you, I was just curious if there are any bills that you are going to be working on in 2022 that you're excited about and you would like us to know about while you're here.
I'll let my colleague, my seatmate go first.
Oh, bills, bills, bills. Well, you know, we have a short session, so we will be gaveling in January and gaveling out just 60 days later. So we won't see too much movement other than what things that have already been in play. So for myself personally, we're going to be looking at some education bills coming from my office, dealing with dual credit for those of you who still have high schoolers or high schoolers to come, dealing with dual credit cost and transcripting. I'll also be doing some really fun, exciting work on data centers and data privacy. And then I'll also be looking at some bills that deal with animal rights. And I'm trying to think I think that kind of takes me to most of the bills I'll be working on, but there's going to be some good stuff, because remember, anything that didn't get over the finish line ends up back in rules. And so nothing's dead until we sine die out at the end of this biennium.
And I have so many that I can't even think. Every day I'm on the phone with someone. The first one that I'm excited about is there are 15 Superior Court judges in Snohomish County, and we're going to bump that up to 17. I'm excited about that. I have a draft because they're really, they don't have enough judges there. I worked on some legislation last year, and I didn't give it the time that I needed for boater safety, being an old Coast Guardsman, and I just got hammered. I mean, I just didn't do the legwork I needed to do. So I'm going to work on some boater safety legislation. I really believe we need to improve diversity in law enforcement. I think we just need more diversity up and down the line. So I'm going to try and get more money into that program. Have one that's going to create a mortgage impound account. Right now, if you're a finance person, your mortgage money goes into, this is going to go to into a mortgage impound account. Part of it will go back to the person, and some of it will go back to an organization called Communities of Concern. It's just a little way for them to get a few dollars. But the one that's a fun piece of legislation, a neighbor of mine, you all know Chuck Wright. If you don't know Chuck Wright, you don't know. He asked me to make pickleball a state sport. And so I went out and I played pickleball one day and fell in love with it. And so I'm working with Councilmember Mead, and we're going to start striping some of the schools so that we can get pickleball courts out there and just let people who aren't football players, who aren't basketball players, go out and have fun playing pickleball. But there are a lot of other little things. And to get more money, I sponsored a bill last year to create a statewide pandemic preparation and response task force. And we only put $500,000 in it. We're going to put another $1 million to $1 million to million, 500,000 to 1 million, to really look at how we responded to this pandemic, what went right, what went wrong, and what we must do better, so that we can address it as the state of Washington and not 39 separate states. So those are the things that we're going to do, and we'll be busy nonstop.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time, and thank you for all you're doing for us in
Thank you.
Olympia. I appreciated the conversation we had a couple weeks ago, and look forward to an open line of communication with you all during the session going forward. So thank you very much. With that, the floor is open. We have a couple proposed forms of resolution. If there's any so desire to move one or none forward, the floor is open.
Which one did you do?
I'm sorry?
Which one was the one that you looked at?
There should be the, they're supposed to be included in our packet, the copy of the original form of the resolution, a red line showing the changes that I was thinking of, and a clean version of my revised version. Did those three not make it into the packet?
Yeah, I think it's in here.
Okay. For that, we would go to our agenda, and the next resolution is 2021-612.
Mayor, if I may make a point of order.
Sure.
I don't know how the rest of council feels here. This is my first opportunity to see the changes, so I would have no problem maybe getting a better look at it during the week and maybe voting on this next week or proposing it next week.
Any objection?
No.
Hearing none, we will move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our study session. See, the city manager's seat is empty right now, so I assume Martin is going to step in.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, our audience. Thank you for being here tonight. Next items on the agenda is our study session, which will involve ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, council priority list, and staff recommendations. Last week, we had the opportunity to see an excellent presentation by our finance director, Laurel Gimzo, excuse me, that provide examples, different agencies, including those on the federal and state level, Snohomish County, and comparable cities, how they are planning in allocating their use of ARPA funds. Mayor also guided us in discussion in developing the next steps and where we are what we got here today. And what we had to do is, at the time, council was tasked with thinking about the range of projects that could be used with ARPA funds, and also prioritizing those projects. We had some excellent examples. I'll give you some that come to mind. Our council members, both Benjamin and Morgan, gave us some examples on how they prioritized and provided those buckets of items that could be used for ARPA funding. I'm going to bring up a spreadsheet here that summarizes a lot of things that we developed over the past week. The process was that council members were tasked with providing their top 3 buckets to our leadership team. Council member Bonds also provided the opportunity for leadership team and Mill Creek staff to also provide their 3 buckets and their recommendations for projects and things that could be used or funded by ARPA. Now I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet that summarizes kind of what we came up with. Naomi, my screen is disabled for participant sharing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't make you folks. There you go. Thanks for your patience.
whole spreadsheet on the page, so I'm going to scroll probably up and down. I think it grabbed both sides. So again, a combination of leadership team and the council members submitted their top 3 priorities and submitted those. We summarized those in the spreadsheet here, as you can see. On the top of the page, you'll see 7 columns, which represents all of those categories. Now, among those 3 top categories from each person, we had to, in some ways, parse those out in ways that fell under some of these categories. So you won't see only 3. And I think I'll scroll down a little bit and you could see the individuals on the far left column who submitted their recommendations. And on the top, not ordered in priority, you'll see revenue generating, small business recovery, city infrastructure and equipment, household, residents, community engagement, DRCC planning, and City of Mill Creek headquarters. We tried to separate these out in a way that was easy to understand. Another thing to mention is that although there are, again, 3 ideas submitted by each person, some of those ideas fell into the same category for each person. So one thing else I'd like to mention also before I hand this over to council is that there was a prior presentation that we had by our fiscal director that emphasized the importance of understanding what is eligible under ARPA and what we can spend on. And so what we wanted to emphasize is item C there, that for government services to the extent of loss of revenue, how can we use fiscal recovery funds to replace lost revenue for the broad range of services that we're going to be talking about soon? One thing is important to also keep in mind is that we all understand that we're not out of the woods and that we have taken steps, although to improve revenue, like in our passport services, we are on the right track moving forward, but we are facing challenges in the coming years. So that's also important to keep in mind. Now I'll pass this to Mayor and our council. Thank you.
Thoughts, comments? Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just be really quick. One of the ideas I had on there with pickleball, we might want to pounce on Representative Lovick. Should have probably tackled him before he hit the door. If he's offering up state monies, I think with the combination of ARPA monies, we can do something special here in the city. Cougar Park 2 or something like that. So just wanted to throw that out there really quick.
Councilmember Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to say I'm really happy to see that there was a lot of overlap with a number of our various buckets and suggestions, both on a broad spectrum and more specific at that, where I think we can find a lot of common ground that will help the city maintain its books and balance properly rather than spending city revenue on projects we had in the books anyway. In addition to making our city prosper, improve, and have additional revenue generating opportunities. So I like the way this is laid out, and I think we have a good stepping stone from here.
Councilmember Briles.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed seeing I think there are really a lot of great ideas on here. I'm in my own, on my own ideas here. I mentioned broadband internet utility. I saw that as under revenue generating. And I also saw the utility rent and mortgage delinquency support for residents and small businesses as both small business recovery or household residents when I saw this, just to clarify which buckets I think that would be in. But I can definitely understand that. And so it's really great to see we have some definite areas of common view on this. And I think we can definitely plan for the future with what we're looking at. And as Councilmember Cavallari mentioned, go to the state legislature and see if we can't get some type of matching funds that would support some of these things. So thank you.
Councilmember Stackler.
Well, when I look at, first of all, the eligible expenditures, the 4 categories, number C, for government services to the extent of loss of revenue, that one in particular. And considering the fact that Councilmember Briles has has said that his broadband utility should be under revenue generation. It's nice to see that 6 of the 7 council members put that down as revenue generating being a choice that they would have for the use of the funds. And it does fit into one of the 4 main categories. So that's nice to see. And out of the 3, looks like the 3 members of the leadership, city leadership, 2 of those also support revenue generating opportunities. There seems to be some consensus that there is a portion of it should be would be supported going into that particular category. So I was pleased to see that. It also appears that in the city infrastructure, there was a large portion of support for services in infrastructure, stormwater, crosswalks, streetscapes, which I assume is in item D, the investments in water, sewer, and broadband, which is obviously covered. We see more as an investment revenue generating opportunity, not just a city infrastructure, although it really is both. A broadband would fit in city infrastructure, but also it's a revenue opportunity for the city. So I was happy to see that there's a lot of other buckets, people, one here, one there, people that do want, but there was some real consistent support for the majority in these 2 buckets of the city infrastructure, stormwater, crosswalks, purchasing land, that type of thing, but also in the revenue generation area. There were 2 outstanding ones. That was interesting to see.
Yeah, I think part of the project going forward, and all of you probably already know this too, and just what I'm thinking as suggestions is, as we gain consensus going forward, just considering the amount of money that we're receiving and we're going to be receiving I think is critical to the piece that we need to understand too moving forward, which will help us better allocate it by percentage or amount, depending on these buckets. And we picked 3 at the beginning. And we may choose 4 or 5 or 6, depending on what we see our priorities, where they fall. I think there's a continued discussion. I don't think, and we may even need to refine these categories as well. I'm not totally confident that we've put them under the right topics. So I'm just thinking out loud and thinking how we can all discuss this going forward.
If I could respond to that, I think these are strategic areas of opportunity that seems to be some consensus. I don't think that means we automatically jump into those areas. I think if anything, we have $5.8 million. A small portion of that could be allocated out for consultants to do some investigative work, to come back to us with some good solid information to help flesh out if these are good ideas and what would they entail, and give us a little bit more information, because we clearly don't have enough information to make decisions. We just have gut feelings at this point of what we think is an opportunity.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a comment I maybe didn't articulate as well last week, but I did speak a little bit internally, and our IT manager is reminding me to remind all of us that ARPA funds aren't necessarily able to be used in Mill Creek because we're not considered to be an underserved community for the broadband. However, we could join the county broadband action team without ARPA funding if we have areas in which we believe we're underserved. The other statement I wanted to make is that we would need to obtain some legal guidance in terms of how we would proceed with this type of an initiative in light of our current franchise agreement for broadband services in the city. So we're here to do whatever the marching orders are, but I want us to at least be aware of those bumpers in terms of how we may or may not going forward.
Personally, I'd like to see more information on where we're not an underserved broadband, because I'm sure there are a number of citizens that might disagree with that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy that we do have quite a few areas of commonality for our buckets that we chose, but I do want to point out, I had mentioned some of these things, and I do not want us to overlook this, that as we're looking at this $5.8 million, seems like a lot of money to us, but it's not really a lot of money. And we are in need of some things that we need to plug in, such as, that's why I put down, for instance, replacing the street sweepers because they keep breaking down. And so I really want to make sure that we are keeping these things in mind. Also, I didn't put it on my list, but discussing with the chief about body cams. We had mentioned that with Representative Lovick and Berg, that we could look for some funds from them for body cams, but I'm assuming that that's not going to be enough. And we would need to look at some funds for ourselves as well. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping in mind that we do have some needs, some things that are deteriorating and breaking down in the city that we need to be looking at when we're looking at how to spend these funds. As well as I agree that we do need to look at some ways to generate some revenue as well. And side note, I just wanted to throw out here that I saw that an article that Mukilteo had voted to some things to do with their funds just, I think it was last week. And they were working on putting money aside for body cams and also updating their AV system in their council chambers as well. So I thought I would just throw that out there since we were curious what other municipalities were doing. Thank you.
Councilmember Briles.
As noted there, like you say, there are bumpers around the broadband utility, and definitely the amount of money that we're talking about. What I wanted to point out there is that I even have in the note there, investigate and develop based on opportunities to partner with other cities, the county, the region, or the state. So however that might possibly work out, even some of that might be that, as I had explained, I'm not entirely sure how our accounting works on an hourly basis within our own staff. So if it is that this may go to paying for our staff to do investigation for some period of time, then that would help to do that. That's part of the bucket. So I'm not planning to use all 5.8 million on that, nor do I think 5.8 million could develop broadband for our entire city. So thank you.
And my takeaways were three. The first is I think there is a consensus that revenue generation, whatever that means, whether it's things we can identify now or have not been identified, seems to be our top priority. The second seems to be some level of investment in either infrastructure or capital improvements, whether it be machinery, trucks, or other infrastructure. And then the third was the more discrete projects, the AV, the body cams. So I think it seems like we're narrowing the buckets. What I think one of the next steps might need to be is there another possible bucket, and how big are each of the buckets? I think Deputy City Manager alluded to that. Is it a dollar figure or percentage? And after reading our results, kind of where I'm stuck, is some of these things, I don't know how big they are and how much they'd swamp the bucket. I have no idea what broadband means in terms of potential cost. And I'm not suggesting that we go do some detailed cost analysis, but I think we need to get some kind of at least back of the napkin idea of what some of these might entail so we can refine our decisions a little bit further. Does anyone disagree with that? Agree? So I think the next step might be is for some of these and again, this isn't to put a detailed cost estimate but what are we looking at for AV? Are we talking 30 grand? Or are we talking 300 grand? What is body cameras going to cost? What does broadband mean? I'm technically illiterate for the most part, so I don't know what that means. If we're talking all 5.8 million, or if we're talking a portion of that might be leveraged with the county to participate. But I think that's, to me, the next step to advance our discussion to determine the size of the buckets is to get some very preliminary numbers to some of these ideas that have been identified. But the second part of that would be, I'm not sure I'm at the point where Councilmember Stackler was with wanting to hire a consultant, but we need to start the thought process on revenue generating. We've come up with our ideas. We need someone to help us figure out what are we not thinking of that could fit into that bucket that we could consider.
If I could add, I agree with you with everything you're saying. When I say the word consultant, I worry about our staff time being able to do this. So bringing in an outside party who might be able to help collect some of this data, but a back of the napkin approach, I like the way you put that. We're not looking for a detailed analysis. There are cities that have established broadbands, maybe looking at a couple of those. What kind of costs have they looked at? Is it at 5.8 million just to set up a broadband, or is it 2 million, or is it $1 million, or what is the cost? I have no idea. But maybe we could get some of that information, but we could bring somebody in to do a little research for us. I don't know if our staff has the time to do that. So yeah, I'm maybe not a full-on consultant.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Have we provided some direction?
Yes, we have, Mayor. And thank
Okay.
you, council, and thank you, staff.
Okay. Where are we? With that, we move to the consent agenda, which is small tonight. Item E, City Council regular meeting minutes of October 26, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did anyone abstain? The consent agenda is approved. On to reports. Just 4 quick things. Reiterate that we're trying to schedule the next coffee talk for the 16th, our off week. Going to plant a seed. If we could start thinking of dates in January or early February for a potential council retreat. We're starting those discussions and trying to formulate a topic and how that might be conducted for next year's council. I meant to bring this up when Representative Berg was here. I just wanted to compliment all the electeds at the different level, from the school district to the police department, in response to that online threat at Jackson that fortunately turned out to be nothing. I don't know about the rest of you. I received a phone call from Dr. Saltzman. I received a phone call from Representative Berg. I know our police chief was on it in an incident with the city manager, and they're online. Again, unfortunately, turned out to be a non-issue, but they were on top of it. So I think the community should be proud of the way we're able to react to that. So I thank them for that. And then the last thing, I won't get into the details, but we'll need to put this on an agenda coming up. The SCT meeting last week focused on the population allocations. So this is one of the first steps in the comp plan update process. So the Office of Financial Management issues the population projections that we're supposed to plan for. That horizon goes out to 2044. And it's the process that's now underway at SCT is to allocate, consistent with the Puget Sound Regional Council's Vision 2050, of where that population is, where we hope it to occur. I believe with the numbers, and I forgot to write them down, but our current population, according to the numbers, is just under 21,000. I believe it's 20,900 and a few. And our projected population in 2044 is a little over 24,000. So that's what we're going to be having to look at our comp plan in the coming years to see what capacity we have available to accommodate that population. And if we don't with our current designations, then we have some discussions to have. So the last comment I'll make on the population allocation is just as my personal opinion. We're again repeating the same problem that we did the last time we did this. So for instance, it's a laudable goal to put a lot of population in Everett. We have light rail, we have transit there. The reality is we can't get businesses to move to Everett to attract people to move there. And so under the current allocation they're looking at, with the population they're planning to occur in Everett, Everett would have to, it's either triple or quadruple its growth rate it's historically seen over the last 10 years. So we've talked about that before, but we'll have more discussion in the months ahead on what these numbers mean and what it means for us as we move forward with our comp plan update. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things. First, I also want to join you in just bragging on our police department and their quick response to the threat at Jackson High School. And also, I've already told the chief this, but I just want to tell everyone I was online and I really appreciated the quick media presence that they had on social media. People were worried and they were asking questions, and immediately our police department had notices coming out on social media, and they were being shared, and I could see everyone sharing those and starting to calm down in real time and you were on it and it just happened really fast. And I just want to commend everyone in that effort and I really appreciate it. Second, I still want a clarification. I had mentioned last time clarification on our lateral incentives. So maybe we can discuss that coming up and whether or not we're being equitable with how we're offering lateral incentives, no matter where an individual is coming from, whether it's in-state or out-state. And finally, I would actually like to take a personal moment in my report and acknowledge that I am wearing white this evening and it is election night. And I want to acknowledge that I'm always aware that I am here and able to vote because the women before me fought for my right to vote. And if it had not been for them, I would not be sitting up here on this dais right now as a council member. And I want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bond, any report tonight?
I wish that I'd remembered. Because the hiccup, we're moving into an era where people are going to expect officers to have body cams. And they're going to be surprised when you don't. They're going to assume you're covering up something if you don't have them. The cost of the body cams is not what is stopping us, as you all know. I'm saying this more for the public. It's the public records requirements whenever we collect data that make it financially in our interest to not collect the data. Which brings me to the issue that I think we should take before our state reps and ask them to bring us some relief, which is state records, public records requests. I am a fan of the public records request policy. I'm a fan of transparency in government, and I believe that law was well intended, and most citizens use it appropriately to advocate their cause, defend their self, or whatever it is they believe in, or whatever they're trying to promote or do. And it holds us accountable and our staff accountable. That's good. But every community has somebody who is taking advantage of it. People can come in and make a very extreme request. And I say this again for the citizens that may not be aware of this. Someone could come in, ask for every email the city's ever had. They've got a window of time to comply. And if they don't comply, the city gets penalized, and the person making the request is given a payment, which incentivizes them to make overly complex requests in an effort to try and get the city or the county to not be able to comply with the request so they can get the reward. That's very broken. And that's not what the intent of the law was. Cities like ours, all around Snohomish County and all over the state, are spending a tremendous amount of money because there's 2, maybe 3 people that abuse this and are chronic requesters of superfluous information that I think reasonable people would say is irrelevant. But they're either mentally ill or they've got some weird agenda going or whatever it is their issue is. And so they're doing these requests and burdening cities with these tasks. A solution I've been advocating to the state reps and other folks over the years is having a hearing examiner of some sort that would hear why you want the request and then could limit the scope or modify it to some degree or completely dismiss it if it was appropriate. We could all spend $50,000 a year to pay for that position, and we would be money ahead. If that doesn't work, then we need to vote in that the state reps and the state electeds are all subject to the same rules we are, and I guarantee you they'll probably come to a solution. But anyway, we should bring that before them, is my thought, and ask them to consider this and see if there's some way to tweak it and still be transparent, but not allow for a very, very minor group. To quote John Lovick, 99.999% of the people are good, but that other little group is abusing this. And we're all, the citizens of Mill Creek and Snohomish County, are incurring the cost of that abuse, and that's not right.
Councilmember Stackler.
Yes, I've got a list of about 20 items here that I wanted to go over tonight that I think, no, I'm just kidding. I don't have a report. No report.
And what's the saying, monkeys? Councilmember Cavallari.
Yes, really quick. I wanted to convey this last week, but I was called out of town. My apologies to everyone in the room. but it is election day. And to maybe dovetail on Councilmember Vignal's point, I'm incredibly honored to be in this room with every one of you elected, appointed city employees. America works because of you, because of your sacrifice in everything you do. And I have nothing but the utmost respect and esteem for every one of you. I wish you all the success and best. Those of you in elections, those of you not, you're the reason America is as great as it is. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and you should always be recognized. Thank you.
Councilmember Briles.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention also that I had seen about the Jackson High threat, and I was really glad to see how that was resolved. It was handled well. I called Michael and said, "You've seen this, right?" And okay. And he'd already told me, "Yep, we're on it. We've been on it for a little while." And I'm going to get an email out that tells you where we're at. And it really helped to alleviate some fears, seeing especially the city response and everything there, that we did have some response to there. Additionally, today I got to interact with our school resource officer, Officer White, at one of the schools that she supports, and saw her in action as someone tried to go right through the crosswalk as they were trying to protect the crosswalk, and she stopped the car with a knock on the window. That was a power move, and I am very proud that that happened. That was amazing, and it was great to watch, and that she helped that citizen to understand just how much they need to be paying attention as they're driving through our city. I did have the opportunity to give her kudos in person, and I just wanted to say the same thing here. So keep up the good work, and keep doing it for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. The only bit of information, I will be out of town for next week's meeting. I believe I can attend via Zoom. I just wanted to let everyone know and ask for permission to attend via Zoom, presuming it's okay with everyone else.
Okay.
All right.
City Manager, your reports, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Very briefly, with response to the question relating to eligibility for bonuses, all applicants are eligible for the bonus. The bonus itself will be contained in the offer letters that go out. Chief Young is going to give us more details on the progress we've made, which we believe is substantial. We had oral boards this past Monday. We've also had additional applicants for the lateral positions make application. Those are being vetted, and we are going to convene another oral board as soon as we have another batch. And we're moving with all due dispatch in consultation with our city attorney regarding the current rules with the Civil Service Commission. And there'll be a little more detail that's provided in Chief Young's report. We do want to recognize the overwhelming success of the Halloween candy caravan at the Jackson High School. A number of folks came together, not the least of which was our communications and marketing team, a newly constituted team of Jody Hawkins and Scott Harder. This also included the Mill Creek police officers, Stan White, Josh Sega, and Chris White. Mill Creek Citizens Patrol, including Barb Heidel, George DeWitt, Jeff Kyle, and Sally Dagna. The Mill Creek Youth Advisory Board and Kiwanis Key Club. We had a number of significant and very important community event sponsors, just from the sheer volume of candy that we had to purchase this year, including Community Transit, Mill Creek Chamber of Commerce, Town and Country Markets, the Kiwanis Club of Mill Creek, NeuroStim TMS Centers, Fred Meyer, Sprouts, Safeway, Starbucks, QFC, First Financial, Northwest Bank, and Walmart. And really just can't congratulate the team enough for the success and how many of the stakeholders in our community enjoyed that event. Thursday, November 11th, we are going to be recognizing our veterans for Veterans Day. The ceremony is going to be posted on all of our websites, and we'll be advertising for that. Chaplain Nick Lewis will speak at the Veterans Monument at Library Park. It's going to be filmed and streamed on social, and the audience will be online due to COVID with no in-person viewing. The filming will occur at 9 a.m., from 9 a.m. to 9:30. And there'll be a Veterans Day meet and greet from 10:30 to 12:30. This is different from our reverse parade from last year. We're happy that there's increased traffic on Main Street in the town center. And with that comes the concern about us really delaying traffic with a reverse parade. So the next iteration of hopefully getting back to normal is that we'll be locating the Veterans Day meet and greet at the Starbucks Town Center from 10:30 to 12:30 in the lower seating area, plus additional seating at the Town and Country Market. We will also be displaying two tents, two 10-by-10 tents with memorabilia placed in the seating areas at Starbucks and Town and Country. The purpose is an opportunity for our community to honor our veterans, allow veterans to meet other veterans in our community. And veterans will enjoy complimentary Starbucks coffee and treats from Town and Country and view memorabilia and artwork from local students. The sponsors for this are the City of Mill Creek, Starbucks Town Center, and the Town and Country Market. Our exciting opportunity is really to build a network of volunteers with our veterans in the community. In my past work in other communities, the volunteers have stepped up and stepped forward to make it a much more meaningful event that encourages veteran participation, both for Memorial Day as well as Veterans Day, and also does it in a manner that's more cost effective for the communities involved. So we see this as a networking opportunity for all of our veterans. The filming will be live. It's going to be simultaneous as the ceremony occurs. However, the audience, we're encouraging everyone to participate online with no in-person viewing, simply because of the unmanageable task of handling potential crowds because of the COVID. And at this point, that'll conclude my report. I do want to turn the floor over to Chief Young to provide all of us with a detailed update on the excellent hustle of securing laterals for the Mill Creek Police Department. Chief Young.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. We are very happy to give you an update on some of the lateral hiring that we're trying to do. So I'll just go over some brief points for your consideration. On September 8th, oral boards were conducted for the position of entry-level police officer. And then we conducted another process on October 7th, trying to select sergeants. We did identify 3 candidates, and we're hoping to do a promotion within the next week or two. On October 13th, the Civil Service Commission certified the entry-level officer and sergeant eligibility list. Then on October 26th, the city announced that it had produced a recruiting video and flyer, which we have seen a little bit of success with. We conducted oral boards for lateral police officer yesterday, Monday, November 1st. We identified 6 highly talented candidates, and we're hoping to be moving them forward in the process very quickly. The notification of results to those candidates were sent out today via email and UPS. I'm sorry, the U.S. Postal Service. We're planning to have this list certified by the Civil Service Commission on November 12th, and we will continue to evaluate the applications as we receive them and schedule oral boards accordingly. Again, we're looking to promote a sergeant within the next couple of weeks, and we're also in the process of conducting a selection process for the internal positions of police corporal that we do have. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Any questions for the chief? Not hearing any. Thank you for the update, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes our report, Mayor. Thank you.
The one other item that's in your packet, it wasn't for discussion today, was regarding the DRCC. That will be on the agenda next week. So we just wanted to give that in advance, so you had more than a few days to take a look at it. With that, that brings us to audience communication. At the end of the meeting, anyone in the audience here? There's 2 people who like to speak to the council. And hearing none. Anyone online? I only have 1 page on my screen. Not seeing anyone wanting to take up the opportunity. So with that, we are going to recess to executive session to discuss the performance of a public employee per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1G. 7:30. Let's start with 30 minutes. So we will be in executive session till 8 o'clock.
Oh, you're still muted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, the executive session is going to be extended to 8:30, and I neglected to say at the outset that no action will be taken at the conclusion of the executive session.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Oh, okay, now I hear you.
Okay, the council has concluded its executive session, and at 8:28, without objection, we will adjourn the regular meeting of the city council.
Okay, very good. Everybody have a good night.